Welcome to week 1 of the Lella Boutique and Chenille-It Quilt-along from Vanessa's new collection, Christmas Eve, and her 'Tis the Season panel. This is going to be a great quilt-along, so come along for the ride. It's going to be really fun. We're focusing on the letters in the center of the panel and also the snowflakes. So we'll be working with 2 different sizes of Chenille-It. The Chenille-It comes in a 5/8 inch width and a 3/8 inch width. For 'Tis the Season, the smaller script part of the writing, we're going to be using the 3/8 inch Chenille-It. And then for the Jolly, we're going to use the 5/8 inch Chenille-It Blooming Bias because those letters are larger and we want a little more texture on those letters. You can see I have the finished quilt hanging behind me, and you can see the difference between the panel before and after we add the chenille. I mean, it's a fabulous panel, but when you put the Chenille-It on, now we're really making those letters pop and giving them some texture. So it just adds that detail that makes the whole thing pop. So the first week we're doing the letters, and we'll start by working on the 3/8 inch width. There are 2 different ways of laying the Chenille-It down onto the panel. And the first way I'm going to show you is just laying it down as you go. And I'm just working with a single layer of the 3/8 inch bias, and I'm just going to start at the very beginning of that letter, and we're just going to follow that along just as if you were writing with the Chenille-It. So I'm just going to start right at the very beginning. I have a slightly shortened stitch length, 2.0, and we're going to center the Chenille-It down the center of this letter. And take a few stitches just to get it started with our needle down, and now we're going to shape this as we go. The Chenille-It is a perfect bias, so you're going to be able to shape that as you go around the letters. There's no right or wrong side to the Chenille-It, so you'll see as we go along that we can just flip it, turn it. It's not going to matter because it has no right or wrong side. So we're just going to start working that around. This is a fairly tight curve, so I'm kind of holding that in place as I go and turning it just a little bit at a time. And I'm centering that down in between. The script is a little bit wider than my chenille, so I'm just going right down the center. Turn that as you go. Just keep stitching, hold it in place. So if you haven't worked with Chenille-It before, just follow us along on this first video, and you'll see that you have several different options of how to lay this down onto your quilts. When you get to a straight area, it goes really quickly. We're just going to come up to the top and flip it. We don't have to cut it or anything to turn our corner. We're just going to come up to the very top and flip it and be ready to go down the next direction. Turn and just come down the other way. And you'll see as we go around this letter how we're turning and flipping it as we go. Now we're going to go back and cross our T and dot our I. And I'm just going to lay down a single layer again and go right across. We're going to stitch right over the chenille that's already on there to cross our T. So that is super easy and fast. And to dot our I, I'm just going to take a couple of about 3/8 inch little snippets of the 3/8 inch and cross them right on top of each other, and then stitch that down both ways and turn it and just stitch the other little piece down the center, and that I, now we've dotted our I. If you haven't used Chenille-It before, or even if you have and you've been using it for a long time, I think you're going to like the second way that you can lay the chenille down onto the panel. What I'm going to do now in the next word is use a water-soluble glue stick. So you want to make sure that it's a water-soluble glue stick, and if you've got one of the kits, you're going to get one in your kit. Okay, this is a fast, easy way to put this on your quilt. And I'm just going to take the water-soluble glue stick, and I'm going to just go all the way along this word with the glue stick. And make sure this is going to wash out when you wash your quilt at the very end to get it to bloom. But I'm just going right down the center of this letter with the glue stick, just following the script. And it's going to be especially helpful when you come to your corners and your points, your turns, to lay this down. I've been using Chenille-It for a long time, and I love this way of putting it on the quilt because it leaves my hands free to do my sewing. So I've got the glue applied, and now I'm going to start laying down the Chenille-It. And you're just going to press this as you go. Kind of get that positioned where you want, and then press it down. I'm laying this down the center. I'm not going out to the edges of the design. I'm going right down the center. And when I get to the top, I'm just flipping that, coming back down the other way. When I went to the top of the T that I had, when I flip it and come down the other way, you're actually going to have a double layer. And you're just going to still stitch down the center of that tape. And it's all just going to bloom, and you're not going to see any difference at all in where I have a double layer and where I have a single layer. When I get the top of the H, that's a little bit tighter turn, so I am just flipping that. Again, I'm centering that down in between the two lines, right down the center of her design. Coming down to the bottom, flipping. You can see after laying it down as you go, how much faster this is to lay this down, because I'm just working with a piece, and all I have to do is take a second piece to lap over the top of that and just keep going. So it doesn't even have to be one continuous piece. Sometimes it's easier to work with just a yard or two of the bias instead of leaving it on the roll, because then it's a little bit easier to just work it around. And when I get to the end, I'm just going to cut that off. Now we're going to cross the T, and there's already chenille there. You're just going to glue right over that. keep things kind of pressed down really well on top of the glue. Clip that end, and now we're ready to take that to the machine and stitch it down. You can see how fast and easy it was to lay the chenille down with the glue stick and then stitch it at your machine. And that's the technique that I'm going to use for the rest of my small 3/8 letters. So next we'll do season, and I'm going to lay it down with, again, I'm going to use the glue stick again to lay these letters down. And I have some very tight curves on this S, so we'll lay that down first. I'm going to start here. Again, it's just like if I was actually writing this out. I'm going to start in the same place. And I'm going down the center between the edges of this letter, right down the center, pressing it in place as I go. Makes it so easy to go around these curves. And when I come up to the very end of this, I'm going to flip it twice. I'm going to flip it at the top and flip it at the bottom, so I have that nice finish to the bottom of my S. Now we're going to do our final word, which is jolly, and it's a bigger print, so we're going to use the 5/8 inch width to do this last word. And again, I'm going to use my glue stick. You could see from the letters that we've already done how fast and easy it is to work with a glue stick. So we're going to go ahead and use that technique on this final letter. Always remember that you have the option of laying it down and stitching it as you go. But this is going to be glued down first, and start at the top of the letter. And again, I'm laying this down in the center. The bias isn't as wide as that letter, but I'm just laying that down in the center. And the glue really helps to go around the curved areas, because you can just kind of press that in place and it's just going to stay there and make it much easier to stitch that down when we go over to the machine. And going across the top of the J, we're just laying it. You're going to have a double layer there. It's going to all look the same after that's stitched and washed. And as we continue around this word, we're just going to apply some water-soluble glue stick right down the center. I'm going to start at the bottom and just gradually lay that down. I'm just pressing it in place as I go around that O. Take your time, just lay that down, press it in place really well as you go around And when you get to the bottom, I'm just lapping it over maybe 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm ready to stitch that in place. Now we're going to stitch the 5/8 inch down to the panel. I'm starting at the very top again and just stitching down the center of the tape. This larger letter is very easy, mostly straight lines, so this is going to be a fast and easy application onto the panel. Just go a little slower when you come down to the curve so that you can kind of hold that in place and still stay in the center of your tape as you go around that curve. And then come back up to the top. And then I'm going to just quickly come back up to the top and stitch across the top of the J. And then I can go back and clip my threads. We're ready to move on. Stitching the O, I'm going to start at the very bottom so that I can get the piece that's lapped. I've got that held in place now, and it's going to be easy to just come around that circle on the machine. Hold everything in place just a little bit as I go around. The chenille is very forgiving. If you waver a little bit or go a little bit to one side or the other, it's very forgiving. Once this is washed and it blooms, it's all just going to look perfect. You're not going to see, you won't see any of your stitching. That's it. The final thing that we're working on today is the snowflakes that are going around the text that's on the quilt. And there are, I counted, there's like 39 snowflakes. But it's not going to take as long as you think, because we've got some fast, easy ways for you to cut and stitch these down. You can see that the snowflakes are just kind of interspersed in between the flowers and the leaves and the branches that we'll be doing next week. And I want to do quite a few at a time. That's going to save me a lot of time. So I'm starting with 1 yard cuts. And you can lay as many of, just, make sure that that's staying down at the end on 1 yard. And I've done as many as 7 at a time. But I'm just going to lay down 3 so that you can see how fast and easy this is. But you could do, 7 or 8 1 yard pieces. Then I'm just going to come back with my rotary cutter and cut on my mat every 3 inches. At 3, at 6, at 9, every 3 inches, all the way down to the yard, the 36-inch line. So you can see where I could just go. I could cut as many strips at once as I want to. Now those are all cut. They're all 3-inch pieces. And I just put those in a bowl where I can grab those. And we'll go to the machine and stitch these on. Each snowflake has 4 3-inch pieces. That's all that we're going to be using. I'm going to do one, just laying it down. I just lay it on one line. And I'm not going to clip my threads each time. I'm just going to turn the panel to the next line. And lay that one down. Make sure you get started at the end. Hold that in place. Secure it. If the threads get in your way, you can just kind of clip that as you go. Hold that in place. Stitch down another line. 2 of them are in place. I'm going to pull that up and just come back up. Now you can go to whichever line is easiest for you to get to without having to manipulate your quilt a lot, because I can just clip that thread and keep that out of my way. Let the rest of your panel just sit up on top. Some of these lines are a little bit shorter than others, so I can just clip a tiny bit off the end so that we're still keeping the design the way she put it on the panel. And it's just that fast. You're just sewing 4 little pieces on each snowflake. And, you know, just a couple of stitches of back stitching at the beginning and the end of each one of those strips so that they're secure. And your snowflake is stitched. Okay, on this next snowflake, the same as we did on the letters, I'm going to apply some glue stick on each one of those lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to lay the strips on there. So if you find that that technique is faster and easier for you to do, you can just get all these in place, and then we'll go back and stitch that in place. We have finished the center of our panel now. All the letters have the chenille. All of our snowflakes are finished, and it's really starting to come together. I know it's going to be really tempting to try and, once you get the letters on, you're going to want to throw this in the washer or hit it with a brush and try and make it bloom. But we don't want to do any of that until the quilt is completely finished, until all of our motifs around the edge are done, and the quilt is bound and finished with a chenille edge and quilted before you get to see it bloom. So be patient. Join us next week, and we'll be doing the flowers and the branches and the design that surrounds the letters on the panel.